Hey guys, and welcome back to the Pathfinder lair. Today I've decided that I will cover the diplomacy skill and what it does for the game, as well as what kind of things you can do with it. I will not be covering diplomacy skill feats in this video, but just know that those allow you to do different things with diplomacy besides the ones covered in this video. Maybe I'll cover those in a different video. Let me know if you guys want me to do that. This game is not just about combat. If it were, it would get boring very fast. No, sometimes you have to talk your way out of a situation, and those can be some of the best moments in this game. Granted, there are other ways to talk your way out of a situation, but we are not talking about those today. We are talking about diplomacy, so let's get started. The first activity that you can do with diplomacy is gather information. Sometimes you are in a town and you need to find out something about an objective that your party is currently pursuing. Well, that falls under the diplomacy skill. The game master determines how difficult it is and how long it will take to find out the information you're looking for, but it's typically 2 hours. You can also spend gold on bribes, drinks, or gifts in order to increase your chances, but the GM determines what, if any, benefits you receive from said items. As a lot of you probably know, in skills you can be untrained, trained, expert, master, or legendary. Each stage makes you better at whatever skill we are talking about, in this case diplomacy. For the gather information activity under diplomacy, how good you are at diplomacy will determine what kind of information you can collect. For instance, if you are untrained in diplomacy, you could maybe get the talk of the town if you use this activity. But if you are legendary, you could get information that only an incredibly select few or extraordinary beings know. On screen, I have what you could find out based on your proficiency in diplomacy. If you succeed on your diplomacy check when using this activity, you gather information about the topic successfully. This does not mean that a rumor you hear is true, but you hear the correct rumor. The GM will determine the specifics. But if you critically fail on your diplomacy check while using this activity, then you are guaranteed to get the incorrect information about the topic in question. The book doesn't actually say what happens on a failure or a critical success, but if I had to guess, I would say that if you fail the diplomacy check, you don't get any credible rumors. If you get a critical success, I would say that everyone wants to talk to you, so you get all kinds of rumors. Some credible, some not. This check is always a secret check, so the GM will roll this for you and add your diplomacy modifier. This is so that you, as the player, don't know what you got on the roll, so you have no idea whether you succeeded or not. This is mainly because your character might have some idea whether the rumor is true, but will never know for sure. Now let's talk about the next activity under diplomacy, and that is making an impression on someone. After meeting someone, if you engage in at least 1 minute of conversation with that person, you can attempt to make a good impression on them. At the end of the conversation, you can attempt a diplomacy check against the number that the GM has for the NPC. This is will DC for you GMs out there, modified by any circumstances that the GM sees fit to impose. Whatever impression you make on the NPC, good or bad, only lasts for the current social interaction unless the GM decides otherwise. Before I continue with this activity, I should talk about attitudes. This is how an NPC feels about you at any given time. A creature that is helpful towards you wishes to actively help you. It will accept reasonable requests from you, which I'll get to requests later in the video, as long as the request isn't at the expense of the creature's goals or quality of life. If you or one of your allies uses a hostile action against the creature, that creature gains a worse attitude depending on the hostile action used. This is true of the friendly condition as well. The friendly attitude means the creature likes you. You can attempt to make requests of that creature, and it is likely to accept requests that are simple and safe and don't cost them much to carry out. The indifferent attitude is what most NPCs start at. This means that the NPC doesn't really care one way or another about you. A creature that is unfriendly towards you dislikes you and specifically distrusts you. It will not accept requests from you. A hostile creature, on the other hand, actively seeks to harm you. It won't necessarily attack, although that is the case most of the time, but it won't accept requests from you, and you generally can't use diplomacy on them. So now that you know the attitudes that an NPC can have, we can move on to what happens when you roll. If you roll a critical success, the creature's attitude increases by 2 steps. So in most cases, indifferent becomes helpful or unfriendly becomes friendly. If you roll a success on your diplomacy check, the creature's attitude increases by 1 step. So in most cases, indifferent becomes friendly or unfriendly becomes indifferent. If you fail the diplomacy check, the creature's attitude stays exactly where it is. In most cases, they remain indifferent to you. But if you critically fail your diplomacy check, the target's attitude decreases by 1 step. So indifferent becomes unfriendly or friendly becomes indifferent, that sort of thing. Now we can finally move on to the last activity under diplomacy, making a request. For one action, you can make a request of a creature that is friendly or helpful to you. You must phrase the request in a way that the target would accept given their current attitude towards you. The GM will determine how difficult the request is and tell you whether the creature will accept the request or not after you make your diplomacy check. Some requests are so unsavory or just flat out impossible, so even a helpful NPC would never agree to them. If you roll a critical success on your diplomacy check, then the target agrees with your request without qualifications. So basically, they're probably going to do what you want without any problem with it. If you roll a success, the target agrees, but they might demand additional provisions or alterations to the request. So essentially, they agree to it, but they might have some problems with how you phrased it. If you roll a failure, the target refuses the request, but they will probably propose an alternative that is less extreme in their eyes. On a critical failure, they refuse the request, and they are so disgusted by it that their attitude decreases by 1 step. And that's going to wrap up this video. If this video helped you, leave a like and subscribe for more Pathfinder 2nd Edition content. You can also check out my Facebook page, my Twitter feed, and my Discord server. Links are in the description. If you want to see more Pathfinder 2e content, you can check out these videos as well. Also, if you have something to say about this game, feel free to start a YouTube channel about it. There are far too few YouTubers covering this content, so few that we could never cover everything. We would love to hear from you on what your thoughts are. If you want me to do a video on diplomacy skill feats, let me know in the comments or any of the links below. So until next time, let's play some Pathfinder.